and the representatives get behind that idea. And if the senators and representatives are going to get behind the idea, what is the necessary precedent to that? It's the voters, right? I mean, we have an intention of a Department of Peace. We try to legislate that, and unless we have the majority of senators and representatives behind it, it will fail. But we can't have the majority of senators and representatives behind it unless we as individuals demand that they do something about that. They have an inertia of, well, that's not the way it's done. We've always done it this way. We've always fought our way to some semblance of peace, and to try to do it in another way could have disastrous effects. But the consciousness of peace in our society is really an infrastructure question. Let me digress for just a moment. We have a vaccine coming, right? And there are two different vaccines coming, both of which require cold storage. One substantially colder than the other. One is probably, one has vaccines already in manufacture, but we need infrastructure to get those vaccines from the production into the individual's arm. And that infrastructure relies upon a whole web of requirements, not the least of which are these super cold refrigerators. But those super cold refrigerators, we just can't go to Amazon and say, ship me 500 of these super cold refrigerators or 5,000 of them. No, that requires manufacturing. The manufacturing requires parts, and the parts requires assembly, and the assembly of these, it requires labor, and we have to have the training of the laborers and so on. We have to have an infrastructure to be able to deliver this. And so it is that we have to have an infrastructure. I'd like to read for you one of the issues that has come up. I hadn't thought about it, but there was an article in New York Times this morning. In fact, it was the lead-off article, and there is a telling paragraph that I'd like to share with you. I say that, and okay, so there it is. In this article, it is speaking of the problem with the consequences of pandemic. The first paragraph. In Boston, transit officials warned of ending weekend service on the commuter rail and shutting down the city's ferries. In Washington, weekend and late-night metro service would be eliminated, and 19 of the system's 91 stations would close. In Atlanta, 70 of the city's 110 bus routes have already been suspended, and that move could become permanent. Our transportation system is being affected by COVID. And what's going to happen when all of these vaccines are administered, assuming that we have a good percentage of our population taking the vaccine, but what's going to happen when those people can't get to work, when the companies are not going to be able to get their workers into the plants? And yes, weekends people work. So we've got a situation where our infrastructure is on the verge of collapse. Now, I'm not here to plant fear. I'm just here to point out the obvious, that we have consequences of this pandemic that we need to address. And we need to address it individually as well as structurally by our government. So, at the same time, this consciousness of peace has an infrastructure. Now, we could mandate a Department of Peace. We could get the senators somehow, bribe them or whatever it takes to get them to make the decision to implement the Department of Peace, but the structure itself is actually going to be built bottom up. Like our infrastructure of transportation, it's built from the bottom up. We have routes defined, we have drivers trained, we have vehicles purchased, we have them serviced and maintained properly. So we have an infrastructure that is built from the bottom up. It may be mandated from the top down, but it's built from the bottom up. And so it is with our infrastructure of consciousness. We may mandate that we're going to have the society of peace, but that peace is not going to come from anywhere unless we build it from the bottom up. And who are the elements of the bottom? Each and every one of us. It is up to us. I'd never put a bumper sticker on my car until I attended Unity of Boulder. I had a fairly new BMW at the time, and a bumper sticker that I saw was one that said, "Peace begins with me." I thought that was an audacious bumper sticker, but there was truth in it. I felt the truth in it. And so I put that bumper sticker. That's the only bumper sticker I've had on my car, before or after that. But peace begins with me. That is essential. I had a conversation with a friend this week who was telling me about his trials and tribulations in his conflict with his wife. And he says, "David, I've been trying to do what you've been telling me to do, but there are just certain triggers that happen. And once that trigger word is said, I just lose it. And I go off on this tirade." And I can understand that. I have triggers myself. Trigger words, trigger phrases, of course, and there are certain triggers that cause me to lose my peace. Well, how are we going to solve that? Let me give you some examples of the triggers that I'm talking about here. We have with us, we have this idea that we're independent of other people, right? We have independence. We don't rely upon anyone, but it turns out that we are very reliant upon our environment. We're very reliant upon our relationships. Some of the emotional triggers that, and I thank psychology today for this list, but these emotional triggers arise from the lack of either acceptance, trying to be understood, trying to be in control, lack of attention, lack of order, safety, respect, and so on. These triggers are for people who have not yet mastered how to diffuse them. They're like kryptonite. They cause this cascade of emotions that just boom, and they're off to the races. Well, there is a Marshall Williams, a doctor of psychology, has offered these several steps for the resolving of these emotional triggers. Number one is accept responsibility for your reactions. You see something going on, you see that cascade of emotion, you see that train of thought and words. You have to first of all accept responsibility, that those are your reactions. They weren't caused by the other person. They were caused by your response to the words that were uttered by the other person. But the other person may be responsible for knowing what your triggers are and popping them. But in the end, the responsibility for your reactions are your own. So you recognize your reactions, and often the reactions will create a bodily sensation. I know when I have an emotional trigger, my solar plexus starts to get tight. I'm feeling in my gut, right? I'm feeling this gut reaction to whatever was said. Determine what triggered the reaction. Okay, let's see. I'm feeling upset now. I'm really getting tense because, oh yeah, he said something that gave me the impression that he didn't accept me, that he didn't respect me, that he didn't allow me to have my reaction to a situation. Well, choose what you want to feel and what you want to do. And here's that here's that essential element of our dynamic is choose. We have the choice. What do we want to feel? Now, it may be in the middle of that cascade of emotions that it's very difficult to step back and say, oh, I can choose. That's right, I can choose how I'm going to respond here. And then deliberately shift our emotional state. Now, back to this question of how do we recognize in the midst of that cascade of emotion, how do we recognize that we are indeed triggered, and that we indeed have the opportunity to make a different choice? I'd like to open the floor to you all. What are your emotional triggers? What are the things that cause you to bing and fly off?
Customer service.
Customer service. Yeah. I'm familiar with that one. What else?
My pet peeve is the drivers who flick their cigarette butts out the window, or the people who are walking on the paths up in the mountains or wherever else and flick their cigarette butts. The world is not your ashtray. That's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah,
it sets me off.
That used to be a big one of mine. In fact, Linda will tell you that I used to actually honk drivers off the road, pull them over, and go up and talk to them about what they had just done. You know, whether they threw a straw out the window. And believe me, I don't do that anymore.
But that's a trigger for Linda.
Yes, that's a trigger for. That's right. But that was back in my 20s. That was before I realized, oops, I could get killed doing this. What else?
I'm going to talk about a situation at work where and I'm on leave for it because of my reaction. But there were some people that came into Starbucks that were not wearing masks. And they were kind of flaunting this, and it was a healthy appearing family that said that they all had medical excuses for not wearing masks. And Starbucks is kind of, you probably heard about the bathroom thing a few years ago where we did a bunch of training, shut down the stores, lost millions of dollars to, do the training to make sure we're a more, the publicity stunt, but basically, there was some validity, I think, to the training that they gave us. So the other thing that I had felt is that Starbucks was emphasizing, the business and the profitability over the new protocols that we were taking to mitigate the COVID risks, like washing our hands every half hour if we were busy. That kind of got thrown out the window and such. And I just had enough one day and talked to a manager about it. And this was a manager who was temporarily at our store, a female, and in expressing this, it triggered me to the point where I was upset, and I didn't feel she was listening to me, and blah blah blah. But it ended up with me raising my voice and her, kind of going back in time to an abusive relationship that she was in, and not really hearing me and what I was. But I was ticked off in this conversation that I didn't feel like Starbucks in the meantime had given us some training that said we could politely refuse service or ask these people to go through the drive-through or something like that. And that wasn't what she brought up. She was more like, we got to, let these people come into the store. If they have a medical excuse, this could be, classified as discrimination, yada, yada, yada. And I was just, I felt like I was beside myself. I raised my voice, and it kind of flipped a switch in me. I wouldn't say I wasn't yelling in my wrath guide voice per se, but I was clearly upset and agitated by it, and I had to take about a half hour before I went back to work. But as a result, I got to take a nice little medical leave, and that's good. But I'm not real happy with my reaction in that situation.
Yeah, trigger, right? The triggers multiplying each other as.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm kind of an old fart for being around a bunch of 20-year-olds at the store, and so that's a different perspective that I have. Plus, coming from a healthcare background is a different perspective on the whole thing.
Yep.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah. What else?
Andrew brought up an interesting point when he said he felt like he wasn't being heard, and that. It has dawned on me recently that that's one of my triggers. It's when I'm in a conversation or in a group of people and I feel ignored or I feel like I'm transparent or whatever. That triggers all kinds of I'm not enough feelings that I've worked hard to let go of. So, and I think that might be the sense of a lot of conflict for us is when we feel like we're not valued and we're not being heard. Not that we have to convince anybody of anything. It's just being heard.
One of my triggers is when I do my very best and I'm criticized for doing it wrong. And so, I don't know. Excuse me. I can think of a lot of situations where I'm doing it, I'm working so hard, and all of a sudden says, you're not enough, or that's the wrong way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have one, but it's a very personal, it's not so much with other people in the society. It's just my inner relationship with certain people, like my housemate, who, when he says something, has this tone in his voice that tells me I'm just nothing but, I'm no good. Not the words he's saying, it's the tone of voice he's using. And I'm watching this with my son and with Chris and Angel, and that starts conflict. And it's very hard for me to control because, boy, I just go off so fast, and I guess that's one of the things I did in my marriage, and that's why I'm not married anymore.
Well, communication is a multi-level thing, right? We have the words that we express, but we also have the facial expressions. We have the tone of voice. We have the body language that is expressed. And all of that in the context of our present state of mind, right? So there's this whole multi-tiered communication that any one of those things, any one of those levels can trigger us. Yeah, thank you.
One of the things that I heard a long time ago was that the saying is, what was it? Be kinder than necessary, for everyone you meet is facing some kind of challenge. And it's very hard for me to remember that when my trigger is pushed.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And if I can sit back long enough to think about it, that really situation, individual, person, whatever it may be, really has nothing to do with me. If I can do that, I can release it. If I can't, then I have to own my own reaction to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Makes me think about what Dick said, made me think about how sometimes when you're triggered by somebody else's actions, you feel personally that there's an affront there. However, that other person is living their own life and experiencing things from a far different perspective than you are, and they may just be having a very bad day. And it's not me they're responding to, it's something else that we're totally unaware of. So.
Yep. Thank you.
My most fun thing right now is John just got a interesting smartwatch that actually registers his tone during a day and gives him a score.
Oh no!
So it's like my most favorite new toy that came into our house, because he's becoming much more hypersensitive to how his tone gets perceived by other people.
Carol, can I ask you, who gave that to him?
He bought it himself.
Oh, okay.
That takes care of my Christmas list.
Sure use that around our house. But in response to Pam's comment there about people, this is something I work so hard with Janine for, because she's working at the doors in Walmart, and she has to check their receipts, and sometimes people are downright nasty, and it throws her off, and it really upsets her a lot. And I have to keep telling her, and Dick does too, it's not meant for you. It's their frustrations that they're dealing with that make them act out like that. But it's hard when she has that over 3 days on a weekend when it's so busy. And, I just try and smile, try and just let it go. But it's tough. It's tough. And tone has a lot to do with that in our family. I would love one of those watches. I got to find out about that.
Well, in fact, Carol, could you post in the chat session the brand of the watch and the source, wherever he picked it up? I think I may need that as well. Okay, so let me continue here in our discussion. The resolving of those emotional triggers, deliberately shifting your emotional state. Those are 5 easy words to state, right? But that's a challenge oftentimes. And so there are, in fact, Marcia Williams again offering us this. The first step is just to take a breath, relax. Detach yourself from that trigger. And, we've offered some excellent ideas regarding that. The other person is in their own frame of mind. They're in their own set of experiences and conditions. We can just say, okay, this is not about me. This is about them. This attachment or this trigger that I'm experiencing is about me. But what caused that trigger to be uttered or expressed, that's not about me. That was someone else doing their thing. Detach from it. Center yourself. Centering yourself is a practice that people will. You have 10 different people will describe their 10 different ways of centering themselves. But essentially, it is about coming to that center of your sensational domain, the center of consciousness, the center of your physicality as well as your consciousness. And the last thing is to focus. Focus on specifically what you want to do, what you want to say, how you want to feel. And these processes are processes that, we can go through that. We can step by step go through that. But the fundamental element that we need, if you will, the foundation of our consciousness infrastructure is our ability to settle ourselves, to come into awareness of the moment, awareness of how we feel, awareness of what caused the trigger to be pulled, but aware that we are responsible for our reaction. And that fundamental element is, as you might guess, meditation. Meditation allows us to come into the awareness of the moment, to come into the awareness of our physicality, to come into the awareness of our present state of mind and our cascade of thought. All of those elements of awareness are part and parcel of our ability to build bottom up the infrastructure of peace. Once we as individuals are able to handle our triggers, that we're able to center ourselves and be deliberate in our response to those triggers, as we are able to consider what's going on around us and to see what part we can each play in bringing peace to the other. Perhaps the other is having a bad day. Perhaps the other has just got out of a conversation with their boss, and the boss wasn't listening to them. Perhaps the other person had just been in a conflict with their spouse or their loved one or their neighbor. Who knows? But the point is that we can be in this peak of awareness through our practice of meditation. Meditation, the foundation of our infrastructure of consciousness. I'd like to share with you a quote that comes from Kabir. Kabir was a 15th century mystic. He was of the Eastern tradition. Let me share with you this. It's a poem, Garden of Flowers. And he says, "Do not go to the garden of flowers. O friend, do not go there, or go not there. In your body is the garden of flowers. Take your seat on the 1,000 petals of the lotus, and there gaze on the infinite beauty." Can you imagine that? Can you, in your own mind, can you see the garden of flowers that is within you? Several years ago, I saw a picture of a hillside, in fact, an entire valley in California that was abloom. It was in the first part of May, and the flowers were just everywhere. Along the Alpine Loop from Lake City, starting in Lake City, going over Cinnamon Pass and then Engineer Pass and back to Lake City, there is the Alpine Valley called American Basin. And American Basin is like that. American Basin in the third week of July, and I'm not suggesting you go there because frankly I like to go there and not have anybody else there, but in the third week of July, the wildflowers, if there's sufficient snowfall in the prior winter, in the third week of July, the American Basin is abloom. It's just gorgeous. In fact, I have in my request for my parting, my final burial spot or the final spreading of ashes, I've asked that my ashes be spread in American Basin. So we have within us the garden of flowers, and Kabir requests that we not try to do the outward things, we not try to go someplace to find peace, but rather to go inside, because it is inside where we are able to find that infinite beauty of the flowers of our own soul. So, let's do that. Let's have some meditation, and I will pull up some music that Doug recorded some time back to be shared here. I think I'm going to do that. And why am I not hearing the music? Well, we will. Doug, could you give us some musical interlude? I know that my voice is going to override it, but Doug, are you there? Thank you. So as we are acknowledging that all we need is awareness, that the peace that we strive to achieve begins with our own awareness, acknowledging that we are not in peace, identifying why we're not in peace, deciding how we want to respond, how we want to be, where in consciousness we want to start, acknowledging that it's up to us individually. It's no one else's responsibility. Our peace begins with ourselves. My peace begins with me. We can identify a trigger that we often respond to. Feel how it feels when that trigger is pulled. Feel where in the body you respond to that trigger. Recognize the effect of that trigger. Recognize the cascade of thoughts, the cascade of emotions that is set in play. Allow that you are the one that is playing those emotions. You are the one that is cascading down that river of thought. Acknowledge also that you can choose to flow in that river of peace. You can choose to be floating downstream, acknowledging the wonder and the glory of that which you pass through. Recognize that you are the captain of your own consciousness. You are the decider in chief. Decide how you want to respond. Acknowledge that you are in control of your response, and notice how that response allows the release of the tension, the release of the bodily reactions. Breathe into that awareness of your power. You are truly powerful. You are truly capable of making those decisions to peace. You are. You are. You are the vessel of God's love. You are the bringer of peace into your own awareness. And it is through your own awareness that you bring peace to your friends, to your family, to your neighbors, to the strangers that you encounter. You are the vessel of your own peace. Breathe into that power, accept that power, acknowledge that power. And so it is. I'd like to share with you our affirmation of our blessings. And a reminder that tinyurl.com/LWU donate is a place where you can make your donations online. The website and the donate button, the website gives you the address if you want to send a check. Send it to my home here. And so, as we hold our offering in our consciousness, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love because I trust in God. I'd like to share with you a video by Michael Gott. Michael Gott is a minister at Unity of Houston, Unity Church of Christianity in Houston. He's also a very talented musician.
Things amazing. Amazing. You will do
just a
amazing.
Obviously. Oh, that's the reason. Okay, here we go. Let's go back and restart.
As we start a new year, I asked Michael if he... David, you need to turn off my... You will do amazing things. Amazing. Amazing. This year, I asked Michael if he'd allow me...
Stop! Thank you for pointing that out to me. The problem was that I had started... There it is. Okay. I had started the meditation music, couldn't figure out why I didn't have it. That's why Doug played, and it was my speakers that were misassigned.
You will do amazing things. Amazing. Amazing. You will do amazing things. You will do amazing things with the choice each new day brings, and with every step you take. Bless the progress that you make. The reason you live is there in every gift you give. Love your life, love your dreams. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. the people you will know. Don't worry when, where, or how. You don't need to know that now. You're on the right track. No need to look ahead or back. Just enjoy what this day brings. You will do amazing things. You don't have to work it out. Just stay in the here and now. Let your mind rest for a little while. Sometimes deepest answers come when you're out there having fun. So close your eyes, take a breath, and smile. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing. You will do amazing things.
Let's have our closing prayer. Doug, if you would please. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, family all around. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace be in the world, let peace be the Lord and let peace stay hearted, let peace be my joyous fall. To take each moment and live each moment in peace so totally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Together, please. The light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And thank you, thank you, thank you. If you would, Kay.
As we prepare to release our circle, and extinguish this flame. We honor the divine light it represents, and we carry that light within us into the world to protect us, to illuminate us, and to guide our actions.
And so it is. Oh boy, let's see. Well, first of all, let's get